Hi, this is Zap, and welcome to the Reset and Zap podcast.
I just need a reset. No, it's not enough to press pause. I think I need a reset. I need a reset. Reset.
Welcome to the Reset and Zap podcast. I am your host, Zap, and with me is my co-host.
Hey, everybody, what's up? It's your boy TJ. And today, we got another guest in the building.
Who's your guest?
Yeah, the hype god himself.
Let me guess. The one that says, Squad. I got it.
You know him?
Yeah.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah,
That's dope. Mr. Squad himself. Yeah. ThousandStar in the building. How you doing, bro?
Squad, what's good?
I love how you said Mr. Squad. I was like, what? It took me a minute.
Squad, you're gonna get mad at me, so I have to do it every time.
Gotta do it.
But guys, I'm so excited for this episode, and I'm always excited for each and every one of them because season 2 so far has been a blast.
Yeah, it has.
It's been so much fun. And in this episode, I have to give a quick warning, a quick disclosure. Okay? If you're a hardcore fighting fan, you know, you might need to tone it down for this episode. I'm just letting you know. Mama Zap is letting you know. You might need to sit back and just be in a neutral position. You know, hear me out. And yeah, just neutral. You know, take your stance, but chill. That's pretty much. I'm just gonna leave it there. Don't use the Konami code. All right, moving on.
Oh,
because what are we talking about? So we're talking about fighting games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So in this episode, we're going to start with a play segment. Can we play?
All right.
Do the effect.
I don't have a button. I need to get like a big play button.
We need to get a play. What's the
so
effect for is it the coin? But I forgot my own effect.
It's
the coin.
But I just want like a big, never mind.
Anyways, moving on. So in our play segment, we're going to talk about what makes a fighting game a fighting game.
Yeah.
And it sounds simple, but I doubt it is. Yeah.
Whew, it can get complicated.
Yeah.
When it comes to fighting games, there's a lot of different there's different levels to it. You know, you got your casual fighting gamers, you got your non-fighting gamers, and you got your hardcore fighting gamers, and they all have different answers to that question.
Yeah. And before we dive into it, after we talk about this in our play section, we're going to transition to our pause segment where we're going to break down to you guys, and I'm so excited because I'm going to take notes myself, a simple guide, a starter's guide of fighting games that you can initiate as a complete noob. You know what I mean? A complete beginner. So if you don't know where to even start, then this episode is for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's start with our play segment. And obviously we got the fighting guru in the building.
Yes, sir.
The man himself who can talk about fighting games.
That's right.
So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to kind of outline what I want you guys to talk about, and then I'll just pass the mic to you guys. So first of all, I just kind of want to do a brief breakdown of the definition of a fighting game. What makes a fighting game a fighting game, which is the question we're talking about. We're going to be discussing about, but also, you know, if you guys want to go technical, want to go and give a couple examples, and based off of real experiences, what you guys play for, you know, in your own time, then feel free to add to it. But let's start off with just defining what makes a fighting game a fighting game.
I'm gonna let Star start off with that one. I want to see what his answer is, and then I'll give you mine.
I love this question. In my personal opinion, fighting games is just like chess. Just think of a human version of chess. Both sides are trying to outwit each other just through moves. And whoever's the outwitted person wins, no matter how you did, smartly, dumbly. The results are the results. There's no excuses. There's no teammates to blame. You win or you lose. That's fighting games in general.
Whew.
I love that analogy.
Me too.
I
really
love
like
chess. So he used the perfect example because I understand chess. I'm like, oh yeah, that is true. You can't blame nobody.
Yeah, like it's literally it's a very skill-based sport. Like it's very skill-based. And I do say sport because it is a sport. I would call it a mental sport, just like chess. Just like he said, like it's all about making the right moves at the right moment. You know, knowing what moves trump what other moves, knowing what your advantages and disadvantages are. So yeah, I think chess is like the perfect analogy for, and I've never thought about it that way, but chess is actually the perfect analogy for what a fighting game is. And just like, that's like the pure essence of what it is. And as someone who is like, you know, I'm somewhere between casual and hardcore. Like I'm not completely casual, but I'm not completely hardcore yet. ThousandStar is teaching me.
You're intermediate?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay. Oh, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. When Tekken 8 come out, me and him gonna have some problems.
You're under construction.
Yeah.
Oh, he's gonna hate me. He is gonna hate me.
Pretty much. But for me, fighting games is just like the basic definition is that, and once again, it gets real complicated again, because if you start getting too specific, then you start alienating other people as well. So it's like, you know, some people would say that Smash Brothers isn't.
I'm gonna warn you right now. Me being a casual one, I got some hot potato questions to ask in between. Like genuine questions that I'm curious about because I don't have the answers to it.
You know what? Let's go there then. That might help. Okay. Help us divvy this up.
So one of the things that has bothered me for most of the time, because some people will argue that they don't consider it a fighting game, but me on the other hand, I kind of do consider it. But not being an expert or a hardcore fighting fan, I'm wondering, would you consider beat 'em up games part of the genre of fighting games?
Star, he's an expert. Okay. I'm gonna let him eat that one.
Okay. Yes and no. Yes, in a way, yes, they have fighting moves like Streets Rage does, other beat 'em ups, but no in a way because there's really no frames on it. You know, there's technically is frame data for a beat 'em up, but you're playing it differently. Because I consider speed running a fighting game in a way, because you have to know the frame perfect situation where speedrunner could get hit by a certain zombie in Resident Evil to get that invincibility frames to go past everyone. You have to know that frame kill for that. So a lot of games have a mixture of other things is if you really break it down, but in the full, I can't. But in a way, yes. I know it's a weird answer, but it's hard to explain that in a short-term way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, I think beat 'em ups are always really closely related to fighting games in a way, because you'll see a lot of like crossover between fighting games and beat 'em ups. Like you'll see a bunch of Final Fight characters will show up in Street Fighter or something like that, and they're always kind of had like this like close relationships with each other. Where you see like, but like from, I guess if you say the hardcore perspective, you could say like it's usually considered like person versus person. It's more considered like a fighting game per se, where it's like it's me versus you, or us two versus them two, or something like that.
Gotcha.
That's more considered a fighting game.
Or even a human versus a computer, but it's a one-on-one.
But it's like a 1v1, 2v2, something. But once again, it gets complicated because then there's 2v2 video. There's 2v2 fighting games as well. There's tag fighting games. There's like Smash Brothers is what do they call Smash? They call it a platform fighting.
Yeah, arena fighting game basically.
Arena fighters. Yeah, so it's like it's kind of like we was in our last episode when we was talking about RPGs. There's different genres of fighting games.
There's also
it's the same kind of thing where it's like there's different genres of fighting games. Like what would you say about that, Star?
Oh, this is tough. Like, you're not wrong what you're saying. Like, I basically agree with what you're saying. It just depends. It really does. Like you said with the beat 'em ups, you're not worried about, like, you can worry about health. You got to manage your health when you play a beat 'em up game. Certain items you want to grab, certain items you don't want to grab. Everyone got different stats, kind of like a fighting game. But you don't have to worry about no real footsies, no ranges. So it gets so weird in the different kind of fighting games. Arena, anime, regular fighters, traditional fighters, OG fighters. It's so vast. It's so vast.
So I guess that beat 'em ups isn't like in a gray area, I guess you would say. It's like it's a hybrid, but not necessarily borderline.
You can see that beat 'em ups were very influenced by fighting games.
Okay.
I would say that beat 'em ups are very influenced by fighting games.
So it spawned from the fighting genre and it became its own thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would say, at least.
Even both ways, because you gotta remember, Final Fight, a lot of those characters became fighting game characters later on. Guy, the wrestling character, Cody.
Oh yeah.
They
Abigail.
They influence each other in different ways.
Yeah, like fight. That's what I'm saying. Like beat 'em ups and fighting games have always had this like close relationship where they're not quite the same thing, but they always somehow end up being connected in some kind of way.
Gotcha. Okay, and then the other question I have before you guys start breaking, because I'm actually interested in listening to like the different like styles within fighting games, and like ThousandStar broke down a little bit, so we can like actually go into more detail. Within the gaming space, like we're only talking about the sport of fighting games. Would you consider fighting games to be technically like the first introduction when it comes to like competitiveness, like bringing competition into the gaming space, or is there another genre besides fighting that has done it before, the fighting genre, that like actually inspired like that competition within the gaming space?
I'm not sure if it was the first or not, but I'll say it's probably the one that took it to that level. Probably the one that like gone the furthest out of all of them. Like there's a lot of competitive video games out there, but I think fighting games is one of the ones that really like brought that to the forefront.
Yeah, because it's kind of hard, and that's the reason why I'm asking, because back in the arcade, well, there was already that spirit of competition, because technically arcades, coin ops, had the high score, so everybody's competing for that high score. So like your vertical shooters would be like one of those that introduce like high scores and stuff like that. So that's why I'm asking, because it's kind of hard to like pinpoint. I can't really pinpoint if fighting game was the one that like blossomed this whole competition. You know what I mean?
The competitive aspect of gaming.
Gaming, or if there like might have been like something else before fighting games.
Yeah, I can't say that fighting games were the first, but I would say, in my opinion, that fighting games are one of the best competitive video games, because it's like you said with the high score thing, that probably was first, where it's like, oh, we'll be competing for the high score. But fighting games made it like that person, especially like in the arcade times, it was literally shoulder to shoulder with another person. And you're like, all right, it's literally me versus you. Let's go. Who's the best? Buttons down. Let's do this kind of thing.
Gotcha.
What would you say, Star?
I guess that makes sense. Like what you were explaining before ThousandStar breaks it down, I didn't think about that. Like I'm talking about highest score, but now you brought up the aspect that there's like human to human interaction. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right, so my nerd hat's on right now, because this game's about to be a long one. I'm sorry in advance. So it's funny that you say that question about we're dealing with competition, because at the time when fighting games was considered competition, like fighting games and TV wasn't a thing for a long time. Even esport was considered esport. There's a segment in I think it was Inside the NFL, or it was one of those inside things on HBO, where they made fun of esports being a sport. They legit made fun of it. In my mind, the first competition was chess. Like Magus Carlson and them really showing what, the same two style with the Queen's Gambit. I don't know all of them. I kind of watch chess, but I don't know everything that's going on, but I'm always intrigued of it. To me, that was the first pure sport outside of, athletes and the Olympics, where this is what you got and that's it. Then, other games come out. There's a dominoes competition right now on TV. Uno competition. There's drawing. Competition has been here this whole time. Even life is a competition. It's just now it's in the forefront. How you can make money out of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can see that.
That makes sense.
See that, because like even in the fighting game genre itself, like it's getting to a level now where some of these tournaments actually have some like ridiculous prize money. Like, Capcom had like this
recently.
Yeah, recently had it was $1 million or something.
$1 million.
Like,
well, I think it's 1 or 2
amount.
million, basically. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And it's a long journey, because I remember the first time we was on TV. Well, we've been on TV before. Technically, Tekken 3 was on TV with the player using Eddie was destroying everybody. I can't remember the whole story. Then the last time after that was Street Fighter 5, when we was on ESPN for Top 8 Evo, and that got a lot of flack for that, because people wasn't ready for esports to be on TV. You can even go further back and think about Smash Bros. Melee.
True.
That was huge at the time when they was on Twitch and everything, when it was Justin.tv and they was streaming stuff like that.
Yes. Like, oh my God, you're bringing me back memories.
I know you reminded me of stuff that I forgot
I was like,
about.
before Twitch, yeah, it is true. It was called.
You talking about the history of fighting games, the nerdiness come out me and Everglasians.
But yeah, man, like it's like he said in the beginning, I remember that period of time when people made fun of what it was and what it is because they didn't understand what really went into it. Like they don't like fighting games can get really, really complicated, really like instinct driven. Like you got to be able to think on your toes, be able to make decisions quicker than I think a lot of people can. That's why I think a lot of the fighting game people like really are quick on their feet because they have to make decision upon decisions every few seconds, every couple frames. There's a decision that has to be made, and if you make the wrong decision, then you lose. And
I bring up the aspect of arcades because at least in my own personal experience, when I like my first memories basically of fighting games and when I actually got introduced to fighting games was because of the arcade. And I feel like arcades played a big major role of like fighting game, and I might be wrong, but like fighting games taking off in the market overall.
Super
and I also like this is on a segue, I compare, and that's me putting it on a high pedestal, I actually compare fighting games as good as like first person shooters because when it comes to competitiveness, they're both up there. Like people take it so dang seriously. So those two genres are like, back to back when it comes to like competition.
And one thing I've actually noticed is a lot of the like top fighting game players are also big FPS people too. Like you'll see some like I've even noticed that with ThousandStar. Like he's big in the fighting games, but he also loves Overwatch. So like he's a big Overwatch guy. So it's like you'll notice that a lot of those
correlations.
Like it's that competitive nature that's in them that like they'll just I'm competitive at fighting games, but I'm also competitive at shooter.
Or something as simple like for me, if I'm gonna talk about something that like within my things that I'm into when it comes to competition, it would be that's one like first person shooters. Resident Evil is a perfect example of that. But also Cuphead, which was a trend not too long ago.
Shoot 'em ups?
And like platformer and like boss rush battles and stuff. So like I would choose those type of games. So I think everybody, and even Splatoon, is a perfect example of games within the competition space. But going back to fighting games, obviously, I think now is a perfect example to like start breaking down what are the different styles, technical terms, everything you need to know of basically of what makes a fighting game a fighting game.
Okay. All right. Well, how about this? I'll pitch some questions at you, and I'll let you answer them, and we can do it that way.
Let's go.
That'll help. Let's go.
All right. So there are like terminology. I think is a big one.
Yeah.
So let's. What would you say are like 3 of the most used terms in fighting games, and what do they mean?
Footsies, basically rock paper scissors, basically. Like a punch, kick, sweep, certain situations, beats, something like that. Anti-airs, somebody jumps, you try to prevent them from jumping on you for that big combo. What's another term? Plus on block, negative on block, frame data. The whole term of frame data is one of the most confusing things that it's hard to teach people. But once they get it, they get it. It's kind of like, it's a math problem, basically. And I always use the term of a punch. When you're about to punch somebody, right? There's a startup frames. When you're about to wind up the punch, when you hit the person, that's active frames. We don't acknowledge this guy right now. It's just for example, people. Don't kill us for this. And then winding it back is recovery frames. That's literally it. If she would have blocked the hit, there's a plus and a minus. So wherever the numbers is, that's how you calculate it. So if we go back, let's have her do it this time so we don't get killed for this again. So let's say her jab is 5 frames, right? We're not gonna worry about the starter frames, just jab is 5 frames. He blocks it, right? His block is +2 on block. He's +2 on block, right? She brings it back. If she does the jab again, instead of it being 5 frames, it's now 3 frames. So he tried to press the button and it's not 3 frames, he just got counter hit so she can do more. gets a little bit more advanced later on, but that's like the startup, basically.
Okay.
Like, it gets a little more crazy where like a DP or you can have certain invisibility frames on certain frames. We'll get to that later. Just for the start.
Gotcha.
That's actually, I like the way you thought that, the way you explained that though, because that did help me like visualize it a lot better.
It's pretty much like a my term is way more vague, but kind of like a roadmap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. So, all right. So we go through terminology. All right. So different styles of fighting games. You know, there's of course, your classic Street Fighter type, which is your 1v1. Then you have
okay. I thought you meant like fighting game. Okay, I had to make sure I know what you meant. So okay,
like fighting game types, basically. Okay. Like you have your 1v1s, your tag fighters, your 2v2s. Like, what are you? Give us a couple of those types, and then like, what do you think the differences are? Like, what are the big major differences between each type?
Okay, I mean for 1v1s, like I call them the Street Fighter types or the modern day. Basically, 1v1. All you gotta worry about is yourself and what the opponent's doing. There's no assists. There's no other things. There could be certain invisibility frames you have to worry about, but generally it's the general term for fighting games. 1v1. Then you got like the 2v2s, like the infamous Marvel's Capcom Infinite or Marvel's Capcom 2v2s. Sometimes they come with assists, so you have to know the timing when your assist comes, because if they know the timing, they can hit your assist. Marvel's Capcom, you didn't have to worry about that, but other games you may have to, because it could affect the assist damage for it. And then you got, of course, the 3v3s, Marvel's Capcom 3 or Ultimate's Capcom 3, where you have to think about, you got 2 assists that you can do at different time frames, different frame datas, long combos, of course, that could kill you most of the time, or not, or put you in a really messed up situation. You got to deal with incoming, outcoming attacks, and then there's a little bit more, but those are the main ones outside of anime fighters, arena fighters. I like to call traditional fighters, because traditional fighter is his own bag of worms. It's blatantly old school, like Capcom vs. SKT2, Street Fighter 2, of course, Street Fighter 3. That's like a whole different segment. Like, fighting games has emerged so much that I can't even compare the OG games to the new games, because so much has changed. But yet, so much is still the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you got the big 2D versus 3D fighters too, which...
No, yeah, I didn't want to get into that. That's a whole nother...
It gets even more complicated with that, because there's other things you have to take into account now, like with 3D. Tekken is a big one where you got to do with like movement. So it's like sidestepping and backstepping, and like now you have this 3D arena where you can kind of move around. So there's now other factors you have to take into account that you don't have to in 2D fighters, and vice versa. There's things in 2D fighting games you have to take into consideration that you don't have to do in 3D fighters. So it's like, actually, that brings me to a good question. And I don't know if there's a real answer for this, but I'm always like, for you personally, what do you think is like, what would you think is more difficult, 2D or 3D fighting games?
That's a very dangerous question, sir. That's a very dangerous question. Unfortunately, I can't give you a solid answer for that. It just varies what you grew up on. If you grew up on 3D games like Tekken, you're going to consider that game to be for you. If you grow up on Street Fighter, you're going to see that's for you. A lot of 3D players may have a hard time playing 2D, and vice versa. It really goes on what you're comfortable with. So it really varies, because each of them has their pros and cons.
Gotcha. So there might be the possibility, which I've heard this a lot, where people who are used to playing like 2D fighters don't necessarily like to transition to 3D fighters, or complain about like the current gen or modern games because they're used to a certain style, and they feel like the other one is taken away from what they're used to. Like, for a perfect example, let's go to Street Fighter. People that are used to playing, the 2D back in the day, to now like the more current gen, the more modern Street Fighter. So like a lot of people don't really consider the modern one to be like the real Street Fighter, because they maybe are like used to the old school ones and stuff like that. I've heard this.
Oh yeah, there's definitely different communities within fighting games. There's certain people who prefer like the older ones, like your third strikers and people like that. There's people who are mainly do the 3D fighters. There's some people who only like certain like particular like companies. Like there's some people who only like SNK games, or only like Capcom fighters, or only like Bandai Namco fighters. There's like so many different groups and nuances within fighting games that sometimes it's hard to even keep track of, because like it can really get complicated because like some people of course you have those people that'll just play fighting games just because they love fighting games. But then there's the real competitive ones who like they kind of focus on a certain style or a certain game because that's kind of the difference between, I say, fighting games and regular. And you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, ThousandStar. But like the fighting games, it's kind of like you kind of have to pick. Like with regular gaming, you can kind of just play whatever and do whatever. But like when if you're trying to become like the top and best of the best, you kind of have to like pick. Like, okay, this is the game that I'm going to master, and this is the one that I'm really going to focus on. But you can play other ones, but it's like, this is the one that I play competitively kind of thing.
It's funny that you say that, and permission to be a villain just for one moment, just for one.
Do your thing.
I feel like fighting games has a very bad stigma that's really getting on my nerves. People always say fighting games is hard. Everything is hard. Playing Warcraft is hard. Playing chess is hard. Playing a one-player game is hard. But for some reason, people get afraid of playing fighting games. They get so overwhelmed. But shooters are just as hard. But for some weird reason, there's a weird stigma. I just want to know from your point of view, why is that? Help me understand, because I grew up on fighting games.
Well, I guess I can answer that, actually. I think it's more so I'm casual. So I think for a casual person looking from the outside, because unfortunately a lot of these communities are toxic and they're all about like that ego boost of who's the best, who's the top dog, and it's all about that competition of I'm just going to tear you down. Like I don't think a lot of people feel welcomed, and they're like terrified because they already have this expectation of, if I step into this, I already gotta like prove from day one like I'm the best fighter, and I don't even want to play online because I'm probably still a noob and somebody's gonna tear me apart and I'm just gonna make me feel like crap. So like that might be, I'm not saying like that's totally the reason why, but it is like the vibe you do get. Because like some people just are cocky. They just so full of themselves and they're like, oh, I'll just get it, give me an easy one so I can just boost my stats or something like that. And
why did you say that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's and I've seen it so many times because let me get it right. I grew in a family where the majority is all male. They're all men. So like I've seen a lot of people playing fighting games at home, and usually that's always what it was. And I kind of find it really unfair because I'm like, okay, so are you truly a good fighter? Because if you're just taking easy ones to boost your stat, how does that define you as really a true best of the best fighter?
Oh, I'm gonna let ThousandStar take this one.
Oh, okay. That was clever. So yeah, it's funny you say that. I went through the same thing in Overwatch, funny enough. I would play that and people would do the same thing. I mean, but I get it. Anything with dealing with competition does bring that terrible toxic energy, unfortunately. So I agree with her. And it does make people feel unwelcome. And I wish I could say we could just do A, B, and C and fix that, but there's always going to be POS people around no matter what you do. So that's why I try my best when people want to learn something. I try to give them as much information as I can to help them out, so that way when they meet that person, they give them that dose of reality.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I do have a genuine question. This might sound dumb, but I'm actually curious about this because this has always been something I've heard and highly debatable. And it's like home consoles. Mm-hmm. And this is like, and probably ThousandStar can tell me a little bit more about this because I'm going like pre-tournaments to post-tournaments for this question. So like when it comes to home consoles, number one, which console do you think has done the best job in introducing fighting games? Because I know that people automatically say the Neo Geo, but realistically, not everybody could afford a Neo Geo back in the day, and not everybody had a Neo Geo back in the day. It's more popular now among collectors, but back in the day for the average consumer, the Neo Geo wasn't your go-to option.
Oh, it was expensive.
So I'm wondering, like realistically across the board, when it comes to home consoles, number one, which one is the best console in introducing fighting games? But then number two, like for tournaments overall, like how do they even predetermine those things? Like on what console, or how does it even work to define like what's the best platform for a fighting game to be played and critiqued during a tournament?
Okay, first of all, that's an excellent question. That is an excellent question. And probably you know about the Neo Geo, because a lot of people do not know about the Neo Geo. This question has layers, unfortunately. It has a lot of layers. In my personal opinion, it's Dreamcast. I think Dreamcast is still one of the kings of fighting games for the old era. You know what I mean? Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Capcom vs. SNK 2, Power Stone 2. I'm gonna be so mad at myself for forgetting the.
Didn't they have a Soul Calibur as well?
Yes. They had the first Soul Calibur, but you can say Soul Calibur 2 because it was on PS2, GameCube. I know that was one of their favorites. I don't think Soul Calibur 2 was on Dreamcast though. They'll kill me in the comments.
The first one was, but not the second one. I think you're right.
I know Soul Blade was in PlayStation.
Look that up while he says it. Yeah.
But you can also make this. So this is a very, like I said, this question is layered. Because if you're going by the past, then yes, Neo Geo, Dreamcast, to me, was like the best two. Maybe SNES and Genesis for Mortal Kombat if you was a Mortal Kombat fan. But outside of that, I would say them two. Around 09-ish, kind of like the mid-modern era, I would say. I sound so old when I'm saying that, but whatever. I'm so old. But anyway, 2009, Street Fighter 4. It was Xbox 360 because at the time, everyone had 360 to play the games on. Because unfortunately at the time, PS3 was lagging really bad when you played it on Street Fighter 4. So 360 was the best option at that time. Then we go around.
Sorry to interrupt, ThousandStar. Apparently there is a game. There's a first Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast.
So the first Soul Calibur. Okay. Yeah, Soul Calibur 1. Yeah, that was Dreamcast.
Okay. Because I know the famous one is Soul Calibur 2 that came out on the GameCube, Xbox, and PS2 because they had all separate characters and stuff.
But Soul Calibur 1 was on the Dreamcast, so that's pretty cool.
So I was on mid-era. When you get to 2015/16, that's where I believe the modern era started, and that's when PS4 did the smart move of taking over and making the deals with Capcom to be the main console for it, which put Xbox on the back of the road outside of Killer Instincts of playing fighting games. Because you had Street Fighter 5. Man, how much people felt about that game? That game opened doors for so many other games because it became the black sheep of Street Fighter games. It made people care about other games and stuff like that. So that game opened up a lot of doors. I can't think of the names right now in my head, but I'll say 2015, PS4. But nowadays, it's PC. PC just makes it better, less lag. People are playing online tournaments. It's just less things you have to worry about. And then a lot of people are streaming and playing now. A lot of pros are making money through streaming, so they're streaming themselves, winning tournaments while getting donations from people and stuff like that. So it really depends on the era. I apologize for the long answer, but that question had layers.
Okay.
And like I say, like in the earlier eras of fighting games, it was really based on which game had the best game, like the less lag, the less drop frames, like which one like physically played the best. And that's usually what most people would go with. Because like when it comes to fighting games, if a game is 1 to 2 frames off, that can completely throw off somebody's game.
Yeah.
Like something as simple as that, it would completely change how the game feels.
Because then again, I gotta go back to FPS. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Like a minimal drop affects gameplay.
Can be a difference between a hit and a miss.
Yeah.
So it's like whichever one had the best frame rate, the best frame data, the one that played the best. And for a long, like you said, for a while it was definitely Neo Geo, Dreamcast. Then for a long time it was the 360. I remember the 360 era fighting games. That was pretty much it was like the competition standard at that point was just we're just going to run this all on 360s.
Yeah. Also, Neo Geo had the majority of the SNK fighting games. Yeah.
And even in the arcade era, if you had certain machines that had the latest update, everyone will go to that arcade. If your arcade did not have the latest patch for something that was broken, they will go to that area. So that's why you have the little areas who had the best players here, especially in New York, where the Chinatown them, if that had the players, that's where they went to. Everyone had their favorite arcade they went to, even if it was a laundromat that had an arcade game. If it had that latest version that took away a problem, like I think it was X-Men vs. Street Fighter, it was all infinites in it, and another person didn't have it, they went to that one. So it just depends.
Also, I'm wondering, because we're talking about arcades. Now I got to be, and ThousandStar probably knows what I'm talking about. Do you think, specifically when we talk about arcades, do you think candy cabs are actually the best ones when it came to like the latest version of fighting games? Because I know a lot of people prefer candy cabs over like, you know, your regular coin-op machines.
Oh, that's tough. I'm not the biggest fan of candy cabs, honestly. Like, I grew up on them, but it's like, I just like the convenience of a console. But if you grew up on, you know, shoot 'em ups and stuff like that, then yeah, you're going to have a piece of it in your heart to get those. So I get it, but I only see one player that played MVC2 that would bring his own candy cab MVC2 to his tournaments. But outside of that,
those things are monsters, the big. Yeah. Just to get them imported, and maintenance wise, they're ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, but they are like and that's the reason why I brought it up, because like for some weird reason in the collector world, it's like such a sought after, mainly arcade collectors. It's like such a sought after item. Oh, you got a candy cab? Wow, you know, that's like the best of the best. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's just like, I think as far as arcade stuff goes now, it's more about the nostalgia of it. It's more like what it represents more than what it is, because it's like it represents an era that's just different than what it is now. Because like he said, for the most part now, most fighting games are like, most of the like the top players and the big pros are going PC now, just because, like I said, it's more convenient. Is, you know, a lot of the times, not all the time, but a lot of the times the best version is running on PC. So it's like.
So does that mean that PC gamers have an advantage over home console gamers?
And that actually, I'm glad you said that, because that brings me to a topic that I wanted to talk about with ThousandStar.
Gotcha.
And that's like those little differences like that, because there's some people who, like, there's weird situations like with the new Mortal Kombat, where it's like there are certain bugs in certain versions of it that does give you an advantage in certain versions of it. And if there's crossplay involved, then it can get kind of sketchy. So it's like, it really depends on the game. Because like if there's no crossplay, then usually it's pretty even. But then now in the era of crossplay, there's, you know, the PC version may have a weird thing going on in it that the PlayStation version doesn't have. And if you're playing somebody who has that version, then they may have this weird thing that you don't have access to. So that's
yeah, I need to talk about. Luckily, they fixed that problem. So that's where we got hot fixes now, because that used to be a problem. Like, I remember Mortal Kombat had a problem with MK9 where if you played on the one player side, you had advantage. For some weird reason, you had advantage. But now they've been fixing that problem. So hot fixes. It's just like, it's weird. You can play on PC. You can play on console, right? If you're just a casual gamer, you're not going to notice the difference. You're just not. Unless you're that person that's really frame perfect, know your computer, you're not going to feel the difference. And if you're a tournament player, yes, you want the latest stuff, but when you go to tournaments, you're not going to always get that. You may play on PC, but the tournament may not can afford having all PCs everywhere, so they might play on PS5, and you're going to feel that lag difference. And it's something that they can't really fix. Also, people forget the monitors you're using, the controller you're using.
And that's what I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of
variant ways that can change that. And also, your comfort zone. When you're playing at home, you're comfortable. You're in your zone. When you're sitting in a tournament and people are watching you, heckling you, that's a lot of pressure. That can change your mindset too when you play too. It's a lot of various things that happen with gaming or tournaments or fighting games in general.
So basically, they have to train because I have that problem. Even today, I had that issue where, like, if I'm used to playing with, let's say, put this in an example, with an Xbox controller, right? And then I switch to playing a Switch game. For some reason, that throws me off. Because then it's as simple as the X and Y button
are swapped. Yeah.
I get it wrong, and that completely ruins the gameplay for me. Because then I have to recalibrate and remember, like, oh, I'm playing with the Switch controller, so, you know, X and Y is. So I'm wondering, they have to train, obviously, to like memorize in a certain way the layout of the controller for if they like last minute have to play on a PS5 or an Xbox controller.
Good question. Luckily, they don't have to worry about that. A lot of times, tournaments don't really do Xbox anymore. It's usually either PS5 or PC nowadays. But yeah, at the time, if it did go from Xbox to PlayStation, I could see that probably being a thing. I guess you get so used to playing it, you just flow with it, so you don't really think about it. But I can see that being a problem later on.
Yeah,
but Switch, that's really a Smash Bros. Problem right there.
Yeah, because like between Xbox and PlayStation, the control setups are pretty similar. So you don't really run into that as much. And if you're playing on PC, you don't run into it at all because you can plug up whatever kind of controller you want these days.
Gotcha.
And that's actually why that's what I wanted to ask you about ThousandStar is because when it comes to fighting games, like in this era, you can pretty much use any kind of controller. Of course, you have your standard controller. You also have the new thing called hitboxes now. And you got your people who still use arcade sticks, and like I've heard different things from different people, but I want to hear your opinion. Is there really an advantage to using one controller type over another?
Okay, this is one of those questions that got layers. I apologize. This one has layers.
It's all good.
Casually, you're not going to see the difference. Casually. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Casually, you're not going to see this. Professionally, yes. Hitbox and controllers have a little bit of advantage if you know what you're doing. You know what? You've seen those hitbox sticks, right? Hitbox stick. But it does take work. It's not like anyone can just play a hitbox and be godlike in the game.
Yeah.
No. It takes work. And yeah, some people call the hitbox a cheat box. It's just another excuse why you lost, honestly. It's just another excuse. It doesn't matter how great your reaction time is. If you're predictable, you're predictable. That's it. So whatever works best for you, use it. I'm not trying to be brutal. I'm just so tired of that conversation. I've been in tournaments and people say, "Oh, he's using the cheat box." If it's such a cheating box, why hasn't it been banned? There's been talks about it. They even nerfed the hitbox where you couldn't do certain input things. Now, there are certain things about hitbox that's weird. There's certain ways you could do like shortcuts, but then we're not going to talk about the controller not having the same shortcuts because we still make money out of that. But we're going to talk to Hitbox, which is its own independent company. So we attack the hitbox, but we don't talk about how PlayStation controllers, Xbox controllers have cancels in it that make it easier to do stuff. We don't want to. We don't want to do this. Like, so it just looks weird when they talk about that.
And then there's always button mapping.
Play what you like. If you want to have a little advantage and put in the work for Hitbox, do it. No problem. You're playing to win. But casually, you're not going to feel that difference.
Okay, because I've always heard different things like, oh, hitbox is better or arcade stick. If you're not playing on an arcade stick, you're not doing it right, kind of stuff. So.
Man, I beat people in arcade stick. I beat people in controller. It ain't no difference. The ass whooping is an ass whooping. Same with a belt or a switch. Well, how you want to get your ass whooped?
I guess my follow-up question too, because that's another debate I hear a lot within the fighting game. Like, I don't know why there's so much stuff always discussed, and it always seems like people cannot agree on one thing. So my question is, and I'll bring up a perfect example, Soul Calibur or games like that. Do you still consider games that utilize like weapons or items part of what like a pure fighting game is, or it has to be, fist up, clean, no use of items, no nothing?
It's absolutely a fighting game. Like, what?
Yeah, to me, a fighting game is a fighting game. Whether it's they even call it weapon-based fighters. Like that's what they're called. It's like weapon-based fighters. Soul Calibur, and there's a bunch of other Samurai Showdown. Yeah, they're just weapon-based fighters, but they're still fighters, and the same concepts that go from fist fighting games to weapon fighting games still apply. So it's like in the big grand scheme of fighting games, the same overall concepts still apply. Like footsies still apply. Like the main concepts of fighting games still apply no matter what the fighting game is. The only thing that changed is the individual mechanics of that fighting game.
Gotcha.
Like if you want a pure, fair fighting game, play Karate Champ. Just play Karate Champ.
Oh yeah.
Like if you really want a pure, fair fighting game, play Karate Champ, bro. Like what are we doing now?
That's the one. That's the NES one, right? Where it's just it's literally just two karate dudes going like this.
Oh god.
Yeah. Like what are you doing? Like
it's considered the first fighting game, but it's like it is and isn't. But I don't know. It technically is because it's like it has fighting bars and all that stuff. It's weird.
These are the same people that don't consider Smash a fighting game, even though it won fighting game of the year. It's like it never ends.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you think there was any people upset about that Smash won fighting game of the year? Like, was that a thing?
You know, I'm gonna be really honest with you. I was first angry about it. I'm not gonna lie, I was. But then when I really look back into the history of it, they deserve it. Smash Bros. Has been like the black sheep of the FGC for some weird reason. Like all the jokes and everything. But I'm like, if it wasn't for the Smash community for a lot of majors wouldn't make profit. Like live tournaments at the time barely could get 10 or 20 people. All of a sudden Smash kids are coming out 80 to 100. They dedicate themselves to that game. This is their livelihood to them. This is their life. So it's like, I understand both sides of the coin a bit because I get it. As a TO, sometimes they can be a headache. Sometimes it's a whole different problem. But at the same time, they should be allowed to be it. And you can make the argument that when they won Fighting Game of the Year, there was no other fighting game for those in competition. But hey, it is what it is. A win is a win.
That is true.
Yeah. I guess I only have one pet peeve, and I can't really tie it to like for a fighting reason. I guess it's more so like a preference of mine. My major complaint, and this is specifically going towards MK. I used to be an MK fan, like old school MK, over Street Fighter, because I mean that's what I grew up with. I owned a copy at home, so that was my go-to, obviously. But I can't seem to bring myself to play like the modern MKs. And mainly the throw off for it is the fatalities. I feel like they've put so much focus into like the finishers, the fatalities, and they're so gruesome and so gory and to a magnitude that it's like the more disgusting apparently the better the game is, and like it throws me off. I can't seem to bring myself to play MK anymore. And
honestly, and I'll let ThousandStar say what he but in my opinion on it, I think the problem with MK is that they kind of painted themselves into a corner with that, because it's like, especially with the newer MK, like ever since MK, when did they cross over to NetherRealm? Was that 9?
It was technically Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. That's the one that made them go DC fully.
Gotcha. So from that point on to up to the modern ones, a lot of the casual, like Mortal Kombat has been very picked up casually. Mm-hmm. Like MK is probably one of the biggest casual played fighting games, I would probably say. And a lot of that casual audience gets into it because of the fatalities and finishers. And they kind of painted themselves in a corner, because it's like, if they unfortunately, if they like took it out, they would lose a ton of sales. Like it would, because you can even tell they even tried to be more creative and do cooler stuff with the Injustice series. Because it's like, they got finishers.
I love Injustice. Yeah, it was great.
They got finishers and stuff in there too, but they found more creative ways than just like ripping people apart and blood spitting.
Exactly.
But the problem is that MK has been doing that for so long that they can't just be like, all right, we're not going to do that anymore.
They can't tone it down.
Unfortunately, it would hurt their sales, I think, in the long run, because the casual audience of Mortal Kombat, which is the biggest audience for Mortal Kombat, would complain. What do you think, though, Star?
So I'm guessing your favorites are MK1 through MKT. I'm guessing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just the old school. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people like the original 3 for what they did, and I mean, I get what she's saying. I get it. They can be a little too much sometimes. I'm not gonna act like I guess because I grew up on it, I'm used to it. Because it's funny, I can watch them do fatalities, but I can't watch a horror movie in real life. So it's kind of funny with me with that. But I can see what she's saying. It's and that's why I'm thankful for Injustice. I really want Injustice 3 because Injustice 2 ended such a cliffhanger to me. So I'm kind of excited. So it's like Injustice, that alternate universe, and actually did do a toned down version of MK before. It was MK versus DC Universe.
Okay.
And it didn't do very
well. It was
well.
the PG-13 one. It's not my favorite, but I see what they were doing. They found a way to not make it brutal because they had DC in there and do those lesser versions of it. So, yeah, technically, if that's your moneymaker, you're risking it when you take it away. But I agree with them. They are kind of in the corner now because, like, what's left to do? What is left to do with the fatality? Like, how many times do I need Kung Lao to slice somebody in half? what the heck?
I'm like really concerned about the future of MK games because it's like, if you've seen some of the Mortal Kombat like 1, the new Mortal Kombat 1, like it's so weird because like Mortal Kombat 1, I'm not talking about Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah, no, you're talking about
Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah, the now. Yeah.
But the one that just came out, like some of those finishers are ridiculous. Like some of them I can't even like. That one they did, they had like a special one for like Thanksgiving.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I need to be a better. Please. I'm sorry. Since we talk about MK1, I got to talk about this. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
I love MK1's story. I think it has probably the second best story of all MK series outside of, to me, MK Deception. MK Deception has a special part in my heart. That story mode, chef's kiss, right?
Facts.
But I hate what they're doing with fatalities right now in MK1. Making people pay for fatalities right now.
Oh, really?
I'm not a fan of that. I don't care if they're Thanksgiving. I don't care if it's Christmas. I'm not a fan of that crap. No. Yeah. I'm not paying for that when I grew up on having it. And
Mortal Kombat has had a lot of controversy lately because they're doing a lot of
Shang Tsung has the worst fatalities I've ever seen. How you mess up Shang Tsung's fatalities? I didn't think it was possible. You just take over somebody's body.
Yeah.
How you mess that up? You got him down with scientific experiments?
And then how much they're charging for some of the costumes and stuff?
Well,
because I think that Scorpion one was like $20 or something. Like, what was it?
Because I wouldn't consider that DLC at all. That's just...
No, that's what I'm saying. Like that, I think that's the big problem with it is that a lot of people are complaining about it because like I said, once again, the fatalities are kind of is what Mortal Kombat is. So when I pay for the game, I'm expecting that I get that.
But you're not?
Not all of it. Like you get the ones that come with the characters, but then they have these special fatalities that you have to pay for. And a lot of people are very upset about that.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like you said, business-wise, you don't have to buy them because you are getting fatalities before. It's an option, but we used to call this, they're fishing right now to see what they can get away with.
Yeah.
People are going to buy it because it's there. So they're going to make them do more of this. And I think we're worried about the future. But yeah, even though I love MK1's story, I love that story. Like, it was so different. Seeing, have y'all watched the story? Because I don't want to ruin it for y'all.
No, I haven't seen it. I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
No.
I'll say this.
I'm probably not going to play it, so feel free.
I'll say this. They made Liu Kang relevant again.
Yeah.
Because Liu Kang was one of the most boring characters to me in the whole series.
Agreed.
He was so boring. And to make him and Raiden swap, it was
at the end of the last MK game is basically Raiden basically makes Liu Kang the new god now.
Yeah.
So instead of the thunder god, he's the fire god now.
Yeah, which makes sense.
And Raiden is just like he's like Liu Kang now, where he's just like a regular human being now. So they basically kind of just swap spots, which is I thought was really like story wise and lore wise. I think Mortal Kombat and like NetherRealm in general does an amazing job. Like Injustice and Mortal Kombat has some of the best cinematic story mode you can get. Like nobody comes close to it.
Nobody.
You can't touch them. And I think that's why Street Fighter went the way that it went, because it tried to do the cinematic story mode thing in the last Street Fighter game. Didn't work out too well. So they said, all right, instead of doing that, we're going to do this open world RPG thing. Mm-hmm. We're going to not try to do what Mortal Kombat is doing because we can't compete on that level.
Well, okay, so let me bring this up, and I'm going to step away from this one because obviously I'm a Capcom creator. But from you guys, what do you think about the new Street Fighter game? Street Fighter 6. Like, where would you place it right now within?
I feel all right. Game? There's two thoughts that I have on it, and one I'll deal with from a business aspect.
Okay.
From a business aspect, Street Fighter 6 is everything it needed to be.
Okay.
Like, this is probably going to be one of the best-selling Street Fighter games of all time. Like, I can easily see that happening because you could tell that Capcom really crafted this game to be what it needed to be. They put the single player stuff because they're seeing the mistakes they made in 5 and they're trying to correct those in 6. So like they're putting more single player content. They're putting more interesting characters, and they're finally going past Third Strike. You know what I'm saying? Like the story wise, they've always kind of been like we're kind of somewhere between Street Fighter 1 and 3. Yeah. Always, we never really go past that. They're finally doing that in this one. they kind of opened it up. They simplified it to make it easier for newcomers to come in, which some may say that's bad, some may say that's good. But from like the business perspective, Capcom really nailed it. And this is going to be a very well-selling Street Fighter game. From the fighting game side, there's good and bad. There's like some people who think this is like the return of Street Fighter. And there's some people who think that it's been dumbed down too much. Like they simplified it too much, where they have these simplified controls where you can basically just push a couple buttons here and there and you can get all the special moves. And then there's some people who is like, well, it doesn't matter if you use simplified controls. If you're a really good at fighting games, you should be able to beat somebody using simplified controls. So it really, Street Fighter 6 is kind of like in this weird middle period. But I feel like as far as like sales and like receiving it, like people like Street Fighter 6 is what Capcom needed right now for Street Fighter.
Gotcha.
And what about you, Star?
So I've been thinking about that question for a very long time. Like a very long time. And I'll say I gotta go different layers on this one. Street Fighter 6 finally killed gatekeeping. That has been the biggest problem with fighting games, is the gatekeeping problem. So if I'm trying to not look at this as a competitor, just looking at the overall aspect, this is probably the best fighting game for this genre of all time. This is their Street Fighter 4 of 2009, because I can teach people this game. It was harder to teach people in Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5. This game, I can teach people it because there's so many layers and future-proof of situations. Now, for me as a competitor, this is tough for me. This hurts my soul, but in a good way, because it shows me the problems of my mindset at the time what I thought a fighting game was, and the problems of that was. Because everyone's gonna have what they think a fighting game is, or where A, B, C is, wherever you grew up on, or wherever you think you're good at. So you don't think outside of yourself. You gotta think of the forest and the trees. And that, to me, what Street Fighter 6 is. It wants everyone to be in there. And it also shows, just because I'm letting you in here, it's not gonna be easy. It looks like it's gonna be easy, where it's modern, controlled, dynamic, but there's still that competitive edge in there. My only beef I have with that game is that it has a lot of mental stack. There's a lot of it. That's my only beef with it, but every game has that too. Every game is BS, depending on how you look at it, wherever game it is. So I'm thankful for Street Fighter 6 in the weirdest way possible. Like, this is the first game I never was excited to play for, but then seeing the evolution of it, watching the videos, because I ain't gonna lie, I hated this game when it first came out. I was a full-blown Street Fighter 6 hater. I'm not gonna lie, I'm being honest. But now, teaching Tokai, teaching my other students everything, and seeing how much they are growing from it, it's their first game they really took seriously, and I could see the gates that was there that would have made it impossible for them. Well, not impossible, but harder.
Much harder, yeah.
Like, it's almost like Street Fighter 6 to me, it's gonna get deep, so I apologize about this. Street Fighter 6 is an example of life. If your life has always been hard, you look at when somebody's life's easy as like, what's going on? Like, it makes you feel uncomfortable because you paved the way to make their life easier, so they wouldn't go through what you went through. So it makes you feel uneasy. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through with the one frame inputs, perfect inputs to do anything, and one missed move and killed the whole team. I don't want people to go through that now. I want everyone to play fighting games, whether you're casual, intermediate, or pro. Street Fighter 6 has opened the doors to people to just play it. Just play the game.
That is true. I agree. I agree with his point, with his assessment, because even like for me, which I'm not gonna admit I'm a hardcore gamer, because I really like, even though I grew up with fighting games, it wasn't my go-to genre.
Yeah.
Like at this point, everybody knows me more for like the Resident Evil girl, the survival horror fan and stuff. Like those are my genre. So obviously it makes sense that my first go-to is not going to pick up a fighting game. But in the meantime, like when it came to Street Fighter 6, for some reason it was easy to pick up and play. Because you're like, oh, cool. Also, and this has nothing to do with even the fighting aspect of Street Fighter 6. This has more to do with the story campaign. Can we just emphasize, I love the fact that Capcom found a really smart and unique way of almost like, in a way and in a sense, like retiring the characters, because in the story campaign, you're pretty much choosing who's your sensei, who's going to be your mentor. And all of them have like age, they mature, they gain experience. And like, they're not your, Chun-Li who never ages, apparently, like she's a little bit older, and teaching other students. And I actually appreciate it more because it feels more realistic. Like, you feel like you have a reason to bond with them besides seeing them like these almost like godly people that are invincible,
Yeah, and like I said, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that Street Fighter timeline is so weird, because like Street Fighter 2 and Alpha like don't like the games don't necessarily go in chronological order, and they kind of like they got stuck in that era. It was like, all right, this is before Street Fighter 2, and this one is actually before Street Fighter 1, and Alpha is before 2 but after 3 but kind of before 2. Like,
it's confusing. It's so confusing.
It's super confusing. Like, Street Fighter 6 is like the first one to really push past that barrier and be like, this is after, because this is at this point, this is like after M. Bison now. Like, M. Bison is technically dead in Street Fighter 6. He's not even like in the game.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is like after Ryu finally beats Bison, and now they're finally going into what's next. You can kind of tell that this Street Fighter is kind of like, and I know some people may not be happy about it, but I feel like this is the Street Fighter that's kind of like saying like, hey, this is like a farewell to like the Street Fighter that you knew.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, we're trying to move on to something else, because a lot of the older characters you don't even really see. Like, you see your staples. Like, of course, you're always going to have your Ryu, your Ken, your Chun-Li, and Blankas and stuff like that.
But they're introducing like newer characters, they're like that newer generation.
They're like, all right, here's some
fighters.
new people. Like, they're trying to position other people as the new people. Like,
yeah.
They're trying to like push it into a new direction now. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of feel differently about this game.
Because people hate to transition. People hate change.
Facts.
Yeah, people do hate change. People do hate change.
Which what a perfect way to transition to pause. Can we pause? Okay, that's enough. So in pause, we're gonna break it down. We're gonna finally reveal the starter guide. So anybody, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna put myself in that group. Us being noobs, complete beginners. Okay, that like to work hard, not like the other people that just want to, fight the easy ones to boost their stats. You know what I mean? We want to earn that title. We want to climb the ladder. You know where I'm going with this, ThousandStar.
I know.
What is a perfect guide of 5 or 6 games that you would tell me, explore within these games to find out what's your favorite? And because they're easy to jump into.
Best fighting games for beginners. Go.
Actually, I'm going to include you. So after he drops his, you can, if you can think of any, you can do it too. Yeah.
I mean, for just regular one-on-one, Street Fighter 6 has modern mode. Like, if you can't do a Hadouken, press forward. So you don't have to. Like, that's like up, down, left, right. That's so simplified. I respect that they had it. At first, it was maybe uneasy, but now, like, I get it. Because execution isn't everything. You can have good execution, but don't know what the next movie can be, or vice versa. So I gotta give Street Fighter 6 for that. It's literally there. They introduce you to fighting games. What you got, TJ?
Ooh, I would also. Street Fighter 6 is a good one. Like, they definitely made it a lot easier for you to get into it. I definitely agree with that. Good game for beginners. For me, I like to look at it a little differently, because I kind of had this problem when I originally wanted to get into fighting games, is that I was asking people like, hey, what is the fighting game that what should I start? Like, where do I start? And ThousandStar actually said something to me that actually really helped. It's really whatever fighting game that you really like. Because like, if you don't like the game, it doesn't matter if it's good for beginners or not, you're not going to want to play it. So like, you really have to pick the fighting game that's good for you.
Gotcha. To
really be like, you got to find your game, you got to find your character, and be like, this is what I'm rocking with, this is who I like, this is who I enjoy, and this is where I'm going to go with it. Because there's not really like I do A, B, C, D, E, F, G to get to being the best. There's a long road that you have to travel. It's like, all right, you got to find, all right, what's the game that I like? All right, let me try that. Let me play all the characters in this game, see what character I'm drawn towards. What is my fighting style? Like, this is something he's taught me. Like, me apparently I'm a very aggressive fighter.
Sounds about right.
I'm very in your face. I need to work on defense quite a bit, but I'm really in your face. So I need characters that are going to be good at being in your face. Like I can't pick a character that's a defensive character for my fighting style. So it's like you got to really like pick and choose what works. It's
funny because I think I have an idea of what type of fighter I am based on my characters, but yeah, we're not gonna go there.
But yeah, but I definitely Street Fighter 6 is definitely good. Like I said, I believe Capcom literally made that game to introduce a new generation of fighting games. That's literally.
Well, screw it. I'm gonna get into it because I'm an Aries. Fun fact, guys, for those that believe in the horoscope. If you don't believe it, I don't care. I'm an Aries. It doesn't make a difference. Anyways, I think the type of characters I tend to go to are like more defensive. I'm very particular of like trying to pre-read a person's moves. And also, I like to go to my fast characters because I like fast characters. If I play with a slow character, that I gotta keep it PG, pisses me off, and I will want to quit this game immediately. That's why I think, low key, an example, I love Soul Calibur.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Soul Calibur is like the game for me because it's
so
fast.
All right, so I'm gonna try to guess a character in Soul Calibur too.
You probably have seen me already,
but I would say Taki.
I'll say Hyde.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can see that.
Definitely.
Okay.
I like more the when it comes to the weapons, I like more of the sword, and I don't like the heavy weapons. I like more something that's fast, because if it's a one-handed weapon, you tend to be slower. So like anything that's like utilizing both hands,
Maxi, yeah, I can see that. Maxi,
yeah.
Taki,
yeah,
Callum.
But keep going forward, keep going back.
Okay. I got one for you. It's a really old game now, but I still think it's a great starter kit game. It's called Fantasy Strike. It's on PC. It's 4 hits. I think 4 or 5 hits, you're dead. But everything is real simplified. Forward, down, left, up. Like they was doing mind controls, just like Dive Kick was for a while.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those hidden tier games that people really need to. It's not mega popular, but I think it's a good game. If you just want to just have some fun, that's a good one. I'm gonna talk about Guilty Gear Strive. I think that is the Street Fighter of the Guilty Gear series, like Street Fighter 6 of it. Guilty Gear Strive really toned down a lot of stuff, but they still got the in-depth controls of it, but it's not as strict as Guilty Gear is. Like Guilty Gear used to be really strict.
And actually, Guilty Gear is on Game Pass right now too.
Yeah,
Guilty Gear Strive.
The game that just came out just now. It's been out, but they did a little more to it, and that was that Grand Blue Fantasy, I believe.
Oh yeah, Grand Blue Fantasy, Reignited or something like this. It's like a new version.
That game is interesting to me. That game is literally modern controls with advanced thinking. It's up, down, left, right. You can do the chord circles if you want to for the super, and it got a 1-button super. But I think at the beginning you lost life if you did. Now it's about the same. But it's not the first game that did that before. I think the game that really started doing the 1-button super, so the auto combos, was what was it? The genre that if you get creatures outside of your mind, I can't think of the name. It's gonna bother me. It's gonna bother me.
Talk about. I can't think of the name of it.
I know of an indie game that's doing that. That is like a 1-button, which I don't know if ThousandStar is away. It's one of my favorite actually. It's called Pocket Rumble.
Oh yeah, Pocket Rumble. I know you're talking about.
Really fun.
It's very similar to like the SNK, like the Chibi SNK games.
Yeah, like Neo Geo. Very
I can't think of the name of the company, but it's fine. But yeah, basically Grand Blue, that's a good one. What else is a good one for?
Would you consider Injustice to be a good game for beginners?
Oh, just Injustice in general, or
like
just
Injustice 1. Let's just say Injustice 1.
I would never. No. Respectfully, no. Here's why, and I'm not trying to be rude when I say that. When you actually do the decor that game is messed up. That is a messed up game because MK Games has something that was very unique from other games. You had the kind of like the 3D games, we had the high, medium, low. A lot of them had that a lot. So you remember the guy that supposed to destroy Superman?
Oh yeah.
Doomsday had something that was really messed up. He had an overhead move that would change priorities every time you use it. So people would spam it. Now, if you're thinking casual, you're not going to think about it. But MK games are kind of, it's weird because I prefer old MK games for starter people to play than the new ones. The new ones are a little bit too competitive. The old ones, you're not going to take it seriously. Just play against the AI and have a good time. But for someone to get into fighting games, I can't fully. And Injustice 2 is mostly about zoning out people. It is a zoner's paradise. But I would say, Street Fighter, Grand Blue, Fantasy Strike. I need 2 more, right? I need 2 more?
Yeah.
I need 2 more. I'm going to go...
Even though I love it, I would say one not to play would be Tekken.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 3D games. 3D games is a whole...
And Tekken is a different monster. Like, you have to have history with Tekken. Like, Tekken has a lot of legacy skill. So it's like... a lot of these characters have 200-300 moves. Like, it's crazy. Even though I love Tekken to death, it's not a good game. I wouldn't say that's a good game for beginners.
Oh, yeah, that game has a long learning curve. Yeah. It's long. Yeah, I'm going to take a chance, though, and say, if you understand, like, if you ask somebody to teach you the Virtua Fighter Triangle, the latest Virtua Fighter game. But Virtua you have to actually really Virtua Fighter Triangle. But that's the thing that gets people is the Virtua Fighter Triangle. It's their rock, paper, scissors. Once you understand what that is, then the game flows. They have easy characters in the game you can play. Just don't touch Akira. A lot of people make this mistake. If you play Virtua Fighter, do not touch Akira. He is not Ryu. This man has 1 free moves. Don't do that. Please don't.
Yeah, and Virtua Fighter is really good for fundamental stuff because, like, it is the fundamental fighting game. It really is. It's like fighting game fun too. It's like fighting game 101. Virtua Fighter is like that game when it comes to that.
Okay. And my last game that's gonna catch people off guard, Skullgirls. I think
really
is so underrated. It's so good.
It is good.
First of all, it was mostly a game with all ladies, so I already respected. They didn't have like mass sex appeal on it. They let the characters be the characters, shine brightly, crazy combos, and they had one of the best tutorials I have ever seen. Had rollback before anyone else had rollback. That game is so underrated.
I love Skullgirls is dope. It's an indie fighting game. Gotcha. It's really like the art style is really dope. Like it's a beautiful. I'm about to show you that game. It's a beautiful game. So cool. It's one of those really underrated games, unfortunately. And I had another game in my head. I'm gonna be biased. The last one, Killer Instinct. That game. I agree.
It's so simple. It's literally everyone has the same moves. It's just at different priorities, and they have a really in-depth guide. If you're good at memorization, you will shine in that game. If somebody keeps doing the same thing over and over again, you can take advantage of that. And that's when the mind games start coming in, where you're thinking what they're thinking and taking advantage that they know what you're thinking. That's when it gets deep.
Yeah, Killer Instinct is dope.
Sounds like a pretty good guide for me. There's quite a bit of variety for people to explore and might like find the one they like.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is a random question, and with this, we're going to lock it in. This is a very random question.
Okay.
Do you consider, and you might tell me no, that's a total different genre, but do you consider wrestling games to be part of the fighting games?
That's
okay. Oh, this has layers. Oh, we get into this.
I'll let you take this one, bro.
Oh my mama! I think No Mercy on N64 is still the best wrestling game of all time.
Yeah.
There is some fighting game preference in it. It's just not fully. I'll say like 20% is fighting games in there because wrestling is its own. Because that's like saying, is UFC game considered a fighting game?
Gotcha.
That's like it's
like a boxing game, a fighting game kind of thing.
It's like technically yes, and technically no, but technically yes because it's a real life fighting game. It's simulating fighting game, so it's like
I would call it a simulation fighting game. I would say that.
There you go. That's the word. Simulation fighting game.
I would call it a simulation fight. Like
because wrestling is fake. Oh my god, did I say that? Sorry.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, put some respect on my childhood wrestling. Put some respect
wrestling,
on my childhood.
boxing, UFC. I would say those are simulation fights.
Well, like the term wrestling is fake. I get what she's saying. It's just that yes, in the whole thing, if you talk about the whole thing is staged and everything, but it's still dangerous. People can die.
Oh yeah, people really get hurt. Like those people do get hurt doing it.
Can you imagine doing those moves in real life? The tombstone, the pedigree, breaking arms, limbs.
Like they literally hit each other with stuff. Like they literally do it.
Yeah.
They may plan to do it, but you're still hitting somebody with a chair at the end of the day.
Them concussions be no joke.
Yeah. Well, this has been a very interesting episode.
It has, man.
I've taken quite a bit of notes. I've learned quite a bit. I'm already overwhelmed by all the information.
Fighting games ain't no joke, man. I'm trying to tell you.
But overwhelmed in a good way, because they're like, oh, wow, there's like ThousandStar says, there's layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
If
it was a cake, it'd be a big one.
Like Shrek says, peeling an onion. You know
like
what I mean?
Peeling an onion.
An onion has many layers to it. It's the same thing with fighting games. But I appreciate you coming and just jumping on board and pleasing us, bestowing upon us your blessing of the fighting guru.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually like this because we get to explore other genres that we might need a third person to put in their input, and it's quite entertaining and informative at the same time.
I really enjoyed this episode.
And the question of the day is, guys, for those that are listening to this episode, first of all, let us know, what is your ultimate favorite fighting game? What is your favorite fighting game? Where do you classify yourself as a fighter? Are you a casual fighter? Are you a hardcore fan? Let us know in the comments below, because I'm actually interested in, and recommend us any games, because there might be some fighting games that people like that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, we might discover a couple of them together. And by the way, where can they find out more about this podcast?
Oh, yeah, that's right. If you're looking for information about this podcast or about all things ZapCristal, you can go to ZapCristal.com. You can join that email list. You'll find out about our streaming schedule. You'll find out about when the podcast is dropping. You'll find out when she's dropping videos. Everything you need to know about ZapCristal is at ZapCristal.com.
All in one place, baby, for all things ZapCristal. And I appreciate each and every one of y'all tuning in, listening to this episode. You guys are magnificent listeners, the best community ever. The Reset and Zap Season 2, baby. It's been a blast.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. But as always, I want to remind you, don't do it. This has been an ongoing thing, ThousandStar. He keeps interrupting me in these episodes. As always, I want to remind you, don't even think about it. To reset and zap for the week. Wow. I'm actually blown away. He did not interrupt me.
Yeah, because it was funnier to see you thinking that I was going to do it. That was actually, all right, y'all. We'll see y'all next time.
See y'all. Happy listening.
Oh, man.